Hello, I'm Jennifer Romanecki, President and CEO of Maurice Selby Botanical Gardens, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the 45th Anniversary Orchid Show, Women Breaking the Glasshouse Ceiling. This year, we are honoring our forward-thinking founder, Maurice Selby, as well as Sarasota pioneer Bertha Palmer, and the many women responsible for making Selby Gardens home to the world's best scientifically documented collection of orchids in the world. The exhibit will also commemorate 3 significant anniversaries: the 45th anniversary of Selby Gardens' public opening, the 100th anniversary of William and Maurice Selby's purchase of the property where the downtown Sarasota campus now stands, and the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, granting women the right to vote. Women have played a powerful role in the success of our institution. This exhibition gives us the opportunity to recognize our female scientists and volunteers who have made significant contributions to the understanding and appreciation of epiphytic plants such as orchids, bromeliads, and ferns. Here, in the Museum of Botany and the Arts, you will explore their important scientific accomplishments. Our mission is to provide bayfront sanctuaries connecting people with air plants of the world, native nature, and our regional history. At the heart of our work is our collection of air plants, also known as epiphytes, which is truly the best of its kind internationally. Our research team has conducted more than 250 expeditions to the tropics and subtropics to collect, study, and conserve plants. Their trips have resulted in more than 2,000 species discovered and or described by Selby Gardens as new for scientific purposes. As a result, Selby Gardens is the most biodiverse botanical garden per acre in the world. Our collections make our botanical research, horticultural display, environmental education, and conservation efforts possible. We sat down with Dr. Sally Chambers and Elizabeth Gandy, 2 of our botanists, to discuss the work that they do and why they do it. And we hope you enjoy hearing from them and exploring the exhibition. Thank you.
My journey to a botanical career has been a winding path. When I was young, my parents were great about making me be outdoors, but not necessarily in natural or wild areas. So I spent a lot of time dirty and playing with bugs and chasing things around, and that definitely influenced my love of the outdoors. When I first went to university, I thought I would study animals. I was all about animals. I worked at a veterinarian office. I was a veterinary technician, which I loved. I loved working with them. But I was heavily influenced by a friend and colleague that was a collector of succulent plants. And as I visited her home and visited her collections, I was just so intrigued by the various forms and the life histories and how some would use smelly flowers to attract flies instead of bees. I loved that. And I just became so intrigued and began to collect myself. And so I think I kind of had a horticultural pathway into the study of plants. And so I took my first botany class when I was in junior college, and my teacher was amazing. He was this fun hippie guy, and he made it fun. And I found that I was so curious about the way that plants, the way that they were able to sustain life on Earth. These seemingly such simple organisms, they're the basis for everything that we are. And I was just blown away by that and wanted to know more. And so as I progressed in university, I said, plants are for me. And so I was not quite sure at the beginning whether or not I wanted to take a field botanical route or a molecular botanical route. I worked in both areas when I was in college, but I ended up just really going towards that field. I loved the exploration aspect of it, and so that became my emphasis.
I grew up in rural Kentucky, and I was surrounded by woods and nature, and I played outside all the time. After going to college, I knew that I wanted to work in the environment. because I was passionate about being outside. I'm also an avid runner, so running on the trails and nature was really exciting to me. And I thought I wanted to go into environmental law, and I decided that would not be a good fit for me. I'd probably be a little too passionate in the courtroom. And I took a plant identification class where I learned how to study trees and identify trees, and I was hooked after that. So I took all the plant classes I could, and I settled on ferns because I felt like we weren't learning a lot about them, but they were really diverse in the area that I was growing in, or working in, rather. Well, I think that in my classes, I felt like we basically just kind of skipped over them. So I learned about trees, I learned about all these flowering plants, but, you know, I saw all this fern diversity growing around us, and I thought, why are we not learning about this? They seem to be big components of the ecosystem. And they reproduce differently, and they're really old. They're a lineage that have been around for a long time, since the dinosaurs, basically. So they're doing something right, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about their adaptive potential and their evolutionary history.
Oh, there is no such thing as an average field day. I have to be honest. But I can tell you that there are things that field days have in common. One of the most important, I feel like, is planning. In order for a field day to be successful, and that's something that maybe a lot of people don't necessarily understand, because you sort of see that end product. You see the photos of people in the field and the collections that come out of it. But before any of that happens, the planning that goes in, where are you going to go? What are your goals? Are you looking at ecological effects? Are you looking to collect? Do you want to see what plants are there? What are their distributions? What are your goals for that? Who will be going? If you're on an international expedition, who are your partners in the host country? That's very important. What sort of permissions are needed? Do you have funding? Where is that funding going to come from? The logistics, especially internationally, are just tremendous. So it can take weeks to set up something maybe locally. If we're on a field trip here in Florida, it can actually go pretty quick. If you're talking about an international expedition, it can be years of planning. And you don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere where you've hiked for days up some mountain and forgot something, right? That's not where you want to be. So you have to make sure that all of your gear is in good working order. And it's a lot of detailed planning. Another thing that they have in common, of course, is sweat. Most of our trips are spent obviously in Central or South America. There's a lot of sweating. Sometimes we are in cooler seasons or cooler habitats, but just lots of effort, lots of physical effort, mental effort, long hours. You're there to do the job, and you're there as long as it takes to get your collections organized and pressed and properly taken care of. Taking a plant from the wild and collecting it is just putting it into a bag and taking a picture of it. That's the easy part. The processing and all of that is what can definitely take some time. Another thing that they have in common is camaraderie. You develop a true camaraderie with the people that you share your field time with, and anyone who has spent time exploring in the field can attest to that, I think. When you spend that time together, not only are you going through trials and tribulations together because you have this sort of discomfort in common, but you get to know each other, and it's really wonderful because you can learn from each other. It's not unusual to be in the field with people with different areas of expertise. And so you can share your knowledge with each other, and it really enriches the experience. And then another thing I feel strongly about is love. You have to love what you're doing. You love the outdoors. You love that sense of exploration. You love the idea of what is beyond that next tree trunk, what is in the next tree canopy. That I think you really have to feel that, and even if you don't necessarily feel it at first, I think after a while you really do. And I think the people that do botanical exploration and field work, they really do love it. You have to.
So my average field day definitely varies on the objective and what I'm trying to do. With some of the local work that I've been doing with the cacti that's endangered, Hericea aboriginum, and Tillandsia utriculata, an endangered epiphytic bromeliad, giant air plant. Usually we're going out and trying to scout for those specific populations. So sometimes we really want to go to different areas to make sure that we get different genotypes and just try to span the broad range across Florida as much as possible. For other projects, specifically international ones, it really depends on the objective that I'm trying to address. So some of my research in Dominica was focused on elevational gradients. So I wanted to make sure that I was sampling plants across these different elevational gradients. I wasn't going out for particular taxa in that case. For some of the research I've done with Bruce Holst in charge of botany, we're just kind of going out and trying to survey different areas. So trying to get just a general sense of the plants that are in some of these remote areas. So a typical field day, that also depends. So generally we try to be out as much as possible. So you're utilizing as much daylight as you have access to. So you want to get up early, get a good breakfast, drink your coffee, and then go into the field. And usually you're bringing, a backpack, binoculars if you're doing epiphytic stuff. For me, I will bring silica and little baggies so I can collect tissue for genetic analyses later on in the lab. We usually bring GPS so that we can, make a point, put a GPS point and get that information of where we collected that plant. Sharpie is really important so you can document everything. Write in the Rain notebook is really important so you can make sure that you take detailed notes about the plants that you collect and the environment that they're in. What else do we bring? Pruners, gloves, long sleeve everything, anything to make sure you're protected. Those are usually the general tools of the trade, I would say.
I think the path to encourage young women, not just young women, anyone really, but young women specifically, I think starts at a very young age. I'm a firm believer in how much our children learn from us as grown-ups, and I would implore all grown-ups everywhere to be very aware of how you react to and in the wild, in nature. So when you find a spider in your home, how do you react? Do you kill it immediately because it's awful? Or do you wonder, why is it there? What is its role? Is it eating other insects that I don't want? Does it deserve to die? No, it does not. So you can take that spider and you can put it in a cup and you can let it go outside. And that's just one small example of how our actions affect the young people around us. And I would encourage people to get your children outside, even if it's just in the backyard. But we're very lucky, just in our area specifically, about how much conservation land we have, and I would encourage everyone to use it. And the studies are very clear, the positive effects that being in nature has on our mental state, both as children and as adults. And I think that early immersion in nature is very powerful. It's very powerful. And as adults, to not have fear, to have questions, ask those questions and help children ask those questions. So it starts early. Moving forward in time, young women, I think encouraging volunteering, being able to immerse yourself with those who are involved in areas that you might be interested in is very powerful, because you really get to see that day to day, what goes on, what goes into being a botanist in whatever botanical area you might be interested in. And mentoring young women is very important. Just giving them that small opportunity to get that leg up. For example, saying, we're going to go on this field expedition, why don't you be the first collector? I don't have to be. Why don't you do it? You use your collection numbers. And it helps them to get that confidence and to have their name out there and to build that sort of botanical base if you're a botanical collector.
So that's another thing that I'm really passionate about, is promoting equality and diversity in STEM in general. And being a young female in science, I've been impacted by that myself. I think being a representative is one big thing. Just seeing somebody like you in a position, that you want to be in, kind of gives you a sense of like, oh wait, I can do that too. So in my career, I've had female mentors that have been really important and integral into my success, and they've served as benchmarks for me to say I can do that. It's also helpful because they understand things that are a little bit different for women than for men. And I think, in general, just having allies in your court. I worked with a male scientist when I was an undergraduate student. It was my first experience into science, and he was really engaging, and he really promoted me and encouraged me as a scientist. And so I really appreciated that, and he's definitely been a very strong mentor for me in the past. So I think just being a representative and being a strong ally and, encouraging people, because, sometimes we need that. So for young women that want to be involved in botany, I would definitely say to get as much research experience as you can. Get involved, volunteer, apply for those internships, apply for those grants. I specifically have worked with a number of students here. Since my time at Selby, I've worked with 8 students ranging from high school to master's level, and 7 of those 8 have been women. So I think, having that experience and where I am in my position, if someone wants to go to graduate school, I know what's required of that. And so I want to do things that I know will be really beneficial for them and help them to be more competitive, in their applications in the future. So that includes, working with me in the lab, generating data, and writing publications. So I hope to have some of those coming out very soon.